يمكن بقية separate screen. Actually, I'm from the board.
हाँ ना बाकरती तो मगर
sound.
या है
Black screen है तो आपने के desert हो मोको सी ये नहीं आ grey में सी आया
गया से ठीक इत पटी इथे पटी
काम करनी
ठीक है
Hi, good morning, Danish.
Good morning, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, am I?
Yeah, you're completely audible.
Thank you, sir.
The frame is okay?
Yes, it's completely fine. Okay.
Okay, fine. We can start anytime you're ready.
Shall we start, sir?
Yeah, please, anytime you're ready.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
Please define briefly how present situation in Eastern Ladakh is different than of 1962.
Danish, I will tell you in all realms. To start with, let's start with the lowest realm, which is the military realm. In the military realm, firstly, the operational preparedness of our forces is much better. Our ability to move our reserves from uncommitted sectors has been demonstrated for the first time, and that you have seen from where all our reserves have moved. The application of the Air Force, the air arm, has been absolute. You have C-130 carriers which are able to take a lot of load to the region, to divert troops, to divert material. We have a plethora of helicopters there now, which are medium and heavy lift capability helicopters. You have attack helicopters operating there. You also have mechanized forces. For the first time, we have been able to push mechanized forces in areas of Depsang and other areas where they are having a lot of utility in terms of operational overtones. And also, if you see, we have been a little more divergent in our approach, and maybe at the lower level and not properly stamped by the military establishment. The lower functionaries there have taken it upon themselves that we will be able to thwart the Chinese designs along the LAC, which happens at small engagements or smaller skirmishes in a military manner, and not to do any more of that, banner drills and all that, which we are doing till Galwan. And Galwan has been a sort of a game changer in terms of our tactics at the lowest level. That besides, if you see, there has been a tremendous push for a few years now, but specifically post this April standoff when it started, towards infrastructure development, and a lot of projects which were hanging in balance have been given a due push. The other way to look at it is the economic angle, and there I find a lot of mind has gone from our side, and in small things like cancellation of applications in the cyber domain, or maybe cancellation of some tenders which have been allotted to the Chinese firms. These are just small measures. The largest grasp has been that we've been able to see that in the near future post COVID, China is not going to be the preferred economic destination for many people in the manufacturing and service sector, and that is where India has tried to step up the game and tried to get more and more business coming to India, and that's a good push. And you will also see a very proactive stance in the WTO when US and other countries now challenge the Chinese way of doing trade. India will be a partner, whether silent or otherwise, but we will always support that motion which benefits the larger world community and takes away business from China. So that's the economic challenge
Sir,
which China faces today from us.
sir,
And last is
and all these things were missing in 1962 during the 1962 crisis.
Yes, yes. I will tell you briefly. You see the diplomatic and military synergy this time. In 1962, in the military realm, we were ill prepared, so to say, and there are brief accounts of the people who served there. I have not experienced that. I was not born then, but in my family, there have been IS officers who have, been talking about it, and I'm quite aware about the preparedness level and how we even didn't have basic equipment and clothing for our troops at that time. How on the basis of non-land movement we had actually just short of the 62 war given military assets of low nature like infantry contribution to Egypt that time, and how the air arm was not utilized. In fact, there are people who served then from the Air Force, the retired generals and veterans, who have lamented the non-use of Air Force at that time, which had a strategic advantage even today. And the option military was that the capability of Air Force to operate from low levels in India to take off and to be able to operate in Tibet is much more pronounced than the ability of PLF to be able to operate from mainland China or otherwise from the air bases in Tibet, and that is the case even now. The ability to target their radar stations, their installations is much more in balance of the Indian Air Force compared to the Chinese Air Force, irrespective of the numbers there. So I
But,
believe the
but
intent
on
and
the
the
other hand, China has also grown since 92, economically as well as militarily.
yes, that's a very fair point you bring out, because one who has closely analyzed Chinese growth from at least 2003 onwards, I've been following China very in
Closely.
detail and
Mhm.
reading a lot of white papers and everything else. You
Mhm.
find China has 2025, if you see, was the era when it right now talked about the economic dependence and made in China kind of a produced in China kind of a fever. But
Mhm.
before that, it had already embarked on a sustained economic growth
Mhm.
with a view to serve the military mission of China.
Mhm.
And it has taken all the advantages in the economic book or the military realm to, in a very surreptitious way and quietly at that,
Mhm.
be able to manage its defense forces. You see, Doklam. Doklam was a change point for China in terms of how it viewed our country
Mhm.
and our actions then until now. And if I just narrate to you in nutshell, Doklam was the point when China decided to merge Lanzhou and Chengdu military regions into the Western Theater or Command, as you say it now.
Yes.
And you see the infrastructure development and basing of troops and military bases and coming right up to the LAC from then has
Mhm.
been substantially spruced up and hastened.
Mhm.
Although China may have thought to do it in 2025 maybe or later,
Mhm.
because it wanted to grow in the military realm as big as China first, US first.
Mhm.
And this has been a little premature from their side to take on everybody from South China, East China Sea to India.
Mhm.
And that is when you find that China has been able to give a push in the last 2 years. And our exercise, which we conducted in September 2019, Exercise Changthang, which was a demonstration
Mhm.
of mechanized forces and the Air Force in Ladakh, was
Mhm.
also a precursor which led China, probably in my thought, to be a little more aggressive in this season, and it will also be in the coming season. It
Mhm.
will look to acquire spaces, and we are prepared for that for the moment.
Sir, let me pick on one of your thoughts. You talked
Yes,
about
please.
the economy, but since
Yes.
for the first time since 1947, India's GDP has shrunk to 23.9% in the last
Yep.
quarter.
I see, Danish. You don't compare an economy on based on one particular year and one particular fall. You see the Indian economy from a different context, as I see it. Because today, in spite of being well read on many geopolitical level, I
Mhm.
also follow economy and I also follow the rural sector of India, and that's where my core business currently is. And when you
Mhm.
see that, we are an agrarian state.
Mhm.
So now let me put it this way:
Mhm.
the agrarian state can always feed the mouths the way it wants. And that is something which is at the backdrop to make the economic spring back at whatever rate. People are very optimistic by 2021 September. If we get the vaccine by September, we'll be able to shape our economy better. Realistic thinking would take it to 2022 maybe. But given that all economies have suffered to some degree, there is no economy in the world which has been hit by COVID which has not plunged. So we have plunged because of our backlog of the economic, whether you take the deficit, trade deficits, or whether you take our, what we owe to the world. Otherwise, the borrowings we have made.
But sir,
And
don't
still
you see we have a problem over here? It's if we are an agrarian society,
Yes,
we can see the protests
yes.
presently going on in Punjab and Haryana.
See, Danish, that's my not lookout. I'm currently sitting in Punjab. I have met a lot of people. Politics is not my cup of tea. People can say whatever they want to say. People
Fine, sir.
talked a lot about.
So let's go
Yes.
back to
So
our topic. Let's
as
go
long
back
as
to
the
our
farmer
topic,
gets the
sir.
money in his bank, he will be happy finally. So you can take him to the street today,
Sir,
but he
let's
won't
go
be there
to
tomorrow
back,
morning.
so let's
when
go
it comes.
back to our topic, sir. Sir, do you think the
Yes,
Indian
please.
army and the establishment has gotten over the psychological barrier that was created because of 1962 war?
No, I would not say that, Danish, for once, because the Indian hierarchy has, in my thought, and I'm a second generation officer at that, I followed it very closely, the psyche of a soldier. And I think we've always had in our hierarchy, in the decision-making body, people who were resolute, who knew what has to be done. And we always had a few pliant people who could not put their view across, whether it was to the bureaucracy or the polity. The decision against China has been more political and bureaucratic in nature, whereas I can say with a lot of conviction that the military authorities in 62 succumbed. Whereas today also, if the polity was weak, the military, I don't know whether it would have been, whether it would be rejuvenated in the thought or not. But yes, certainly, in the current creed of the junior leadership, which has been the case for the last many decades, eyeball to eyeball, you see Pakistan, and now you see eyeball to eyeball China. There is no relenting feeling there at that level, which is tactical and operational. The strategic domain derives its strength only from the polity and the decision makers. So if the government has make this decision this time, I'm quite sure it is in favor of the military. I will give you two more examples of J&K first. In J&K also 2014, late Shri Jaitley was the new defense minister then, and I was there. And he came and there was a young soldier, not very young, maybe a JCO at that time. And he was talking about a post which was visible from where Mr. Jaitley was standing, the Pakistani post. And that JCO remarked that if you give us the freedom, we'll be able to do what we want to do. So Mr. Jaitley turned around and looked at the military commanders, and there are a few of them who now come on national television and talk otherwise, as if they did a lot of great things in their times. And he said, who has stopped you? What you do at the LC is your business to protect the territorial integrity. The measures you take are military in nature. Please go ahead. And that time and this time, there's been paradigm shift. I was in part of a think tank on the backdrop of Galwan on 16th night, and I gave a lot of advices to the concerned people. And I found while I was giving those advice, there was certain section in bureaucracy and the polity which were a little apprehensive of the proactive stance which people like me were recommending. But I'm so glad out of the 17 things I told, 16 and a half have been done in the last 4 months. So that is a change. That mindset change has already happened. And the diplomatic drive which you see is supported.
In other words, you are saying that political leadership in 1962 and the political leadership in 2020 are poles apart.
No. I will say there's a difference of the
as far as the decision making is concerned.
Yes. Decision making, certainly. Decision may have gone wrong at that time militarily. But let me tell you my thoughts on 62 also, because there's a lot of political bashing of 62 otherwise. 62 was an era when India was rising from 49, when China was recognized by us as a state, and what measures we took and the benevolence we had. And we stirred up non-aligned movement and such like peace missions as a world, trying to be a world leader. The aim was different. And then we were sort of backstabbed. So you can't politically hold a person accountable at that era for that decision making. But yes, when you see that you are a resolute a political leader and a bureaucrat of that era, I'm quite sure the signs were clear pre-62. So if you negated those signs and still had that situation build up, then you are to be blamed, and that is right to apportion that blame. But the two eras are different. Now it's a resurgent India which takes a mantle to own up to go to the UNSC as a requirement of not Indian state, but as one of the world. We represent the world community. We are a growing population. We are a growing market. We are a growing strength. So that is where we have now shifted, and a
Mhm.
little bit of aggressive diplomacy is something which India is now tuned to do, and
Mhm.
India must encash on that mission. So there is a definite change of geopolitical situation of 62 and 2020, and India must change those stances as we go along.
No, no, point taken. Let's come to the
We were absolutely that we will not join NATO, we will not go there. But
Mhm.
now today, even if you don't join NATO or otherwise, we don't formally call Quad a military mission,
fine,
you
fine.
have to make
Point taken.
choices.
Let's come to the
As a
other
country,
neighbor.
economic, military choices have to be made.
Let's come to
Yeah,
the other
please.
neighbor now. If there is a conventional war between
Yeah.
China and India presently, do you think the
Yes.
Western neighbor would open another front against India? What are the
See,
possibilities of such activity?
firstly, the possibility of a full-fledged war between China and India is very low. And I don't say from an Indian perspective that we don't want to go in there.
Mhm.
I want to say from the Chinese perspective, because the kind of backlash China will face, and it is not even sure who will be standing with India in what partnership, what military angle. So that's China's, doomsday, as you call it, if it goes there. Having said that, even if that happens, see, Pakistan is at it. What is that Pakistan has stopped?
Mhm.
Pakistan made a state policy to bleed you through 1,000 cuts. Whatever that policy was, stated policy. Terrorism is a stated policy. It is following it. There's no change there.
Mhm.
It is just that your ability to pick up and make it a little, calm has been there, and aggressive overtures trying to cut the economic linkages to Pakistan from whether Middle East or otherwise, to cut off the US assistance on the garb of military being diverted to terrorism has been cut. The diplomatic channels have opened up so well that we have isolated Pakistan. FATF is standing on its head by just a few votes. It is trying to manage into the grey list. So you have done enough there. And if you see Pakistan, if you see the military capability, don't get misquote me on that count, but China's logistic capability to wage a war won't last with India conventionally for more than 4 days. And the kind of way it has gone into areas of Azerbaijan and other places, I don't think so. Pakistan has got anything to substantially have any dent on our operational conventional capabilities.
But then
Indian
there are also
capabilities
reports
still are
that
much stronger.
90,000 Pakistani soldiers are presently stationed in northern Ladakh.
That's perfectly fine. Who is stopping them? We are monitoring. There are Chinese troops in Skardu. And let me tell you, there are a lot of analysts who are getting it a little wavery by saying two-front war, and people are trying to start up a war by tomorrow morning. China has got extreme interest, economic interest to start with, to connect to the Gwadar port as fast as possible. The CPEC goes through that. It is using Chinese troops as, when I say as labor and security guards to do the dirty job, because they're not convinced in the area of northern frontiers. There are a lot of backlash for the Chinese projects. So the army has been deployed for that reason primarily. You don't see a joint Chinese and Pakistani exercise coming in, except one video you saw. They were standing and there was a Pakistani identified as a SSG commando standing with the PLA. That could be an old exercise. But for China and Pakistan to join hands and come towards Siachen or to Ladakh or from Skardu, it's okay. It is feasible. I'm not denying that possibility. But the consequences for both the nations are going to be too rude, because Pakistan is going to be militarily devastated by the Indian might, irrespective of the fact that the Indian channels right in the winters. Now you see the two contexts. We think of a war or a skirmish with China primarily in the Ladakh region in summers. And the best reasons for Pakistan season is the winters. So you see our potential. Nobody has gauged this. I had to tell somebody this, that you can move reserves only because of this context. You have a window. So that is the way Indian armed forces will react. And now with the enhanced capabilities of surveillance and the Air Force, I think we are at a very good operational advantage. So I don't think that's going to happen very soon, Danish. But yes, the possibility always remains. We have talked about a two-front war, 2.5 front war, and I know how many fronts
India
we'll
is
create.
completely prepared for a two-front war if that happens.
Yes, Nisi, what are you looking at the end state? The end state defines that I commit to you whether we are prepared or not. If the end state is to put China on a back foot within a given period of time on a short war or a limited skirmish, and even if it's a prolonged war with Pakistan, which Pakistan can't sustain, yes, we are ready for it. But if you're thinking of a long drawn campaign with the two of them, militarily, conventionally, neither has got the potential to carry on. And if you're thinking of that same bleeding technique to continue from both sides, yes, that is the distinct possibility. So next 5-7 years, you will find more, transgressions along the LAC. You will have a lot of, interaction with the PLA. You will have Pakistan, from the other side. That will continue, and that we are much more capable of doing and handling right now.
But sir, then there are some reports. India's constitutionally mandated auditor has said that 55% types of ammunition are below the minimum acceptable risk level. Then also stop
Yes, when you
40% of ammunition are not sufficient for even 10 days war. Even Indian,
sure.
even Indian Air Force fleet is too shrinking. Recently, we had 5 Rafales. We will be having only 36 by 2022. Not only this, the previous former air chief has said that we need 42 squadrons for a two-front.
Sure.
Presently, we only have 30 squadrons.
Correct, Danish. I agree with you. The Mars levels of ammunition are overall requirement. And overall requirements are based on conventional threat perceptions, Danish, and for a sustained conventional war. If you see from that angle, we have still a little way to go when we can have that kind of a capability. But now look at the last about, say, 4 or 5 weeks first, and then I will take you back to 4 or 5 months. The kind of weaponry which is now coming to the country to take care of exactly what you're saying is a huge game changer and a force multiplier. If you see specifically with the US in the last 3-4 weeks, what have we got from them? We're not asking for Boeing airplanes or F-35s or F-16s. What we are asking are for squibs, for fuses. What are these? These are exactly the same thing which you are saying about the Mars capability of ammunition.
But sir, they won't be delivered right
lacking
now.
Not because
they
of
won't
ammunition.
Be delivered even next 1 month.
No, it has. I know I can't commit to you now what has been delivered. But suffice to say, the potential you are saying of a conventional war has increased by nearly 1.5 weeks as compared to Pakistan. If you compare 4 days of Pakistan and 18 days of Indian capability, it's quite a huge difference in terms of conventional operations. So that's the current state. I will not put a number to that on a interview right like this, but much has happened in the last 5 weeks.
Fine. So point taken. Sir, one more important thing. Sir, why there is no briefing as of now what's happening on the Ladakh? Why is it so?
Pardon, just I didn't get the question.
There has been completely no briefing from the government side or the Ministry of Defense side on what is happening in Ladakh. So why is it so?
That's been a hot topic for the last 5 months, and a lot of political backlash and people trying to steer questions, ask questions. Let me tell you 2 things. Firstly, when you see both, and people comment from the other side in Pakistan that when it is with us, you keep commenting every day. Your people talk, your chiefs talk, your CDS talks, but with China nobody talks. Why?
This discussion is going on for a long on social media platforms as well.
Yes. While it is going on in social media platform, you do have a formal brief from both the MEA and the military at the given time when they have decided to give a brief. Those are official briefs, and those official briefs carry a lot of weight. Then you have, I would not say back channel, but there are people who come on television, whether from the bureaucratic angle or diplomatic angle or military angle, even veterans like us, who have a lot of knowledge, but without disclosing the specifics, we give a little bit of hint of what is happening on ground. And there are many who have got a very focused, connect to the ground as well. If you ask me about Galwan, still the world community does not know what happened pre-Galwan. So that's for another day when we meet over coffee. I can't tell you here, but that's the way it goes, Danish. And I think it's a very good idea. It's a very good idea not to talk about an ongoing operation, because we have seen in Kargil, we have seen even in the JNK sector, and those areas where you have the access of civilians closer to the LC, news travels very fast. And why it travels fast is there because right from the porters who are in the summer period doing, carrying out the logistic maintenance of the higher post, information flows. That kind of porter management and that kind of a civilian access is not there in LAC. It's totally military access, ITBP, Indian Army, and the Air Force and the other agencies. So when you are doing your own logistics,
sir, you are telling me that they are not briefing the people or the media or the country only to keep a secrecy of the mission.
No, not at all. Not at all. See, it's not about secrecy. The Indian Armed Forces would like to maintain secrecy across the spectrum, whether it's LC or LAC. We don't like to divulge. What happens in JNK is many people get access to information which they're not supposed to have from sources which may have seen or heard something. For example, there's a porter who's gone to a post at 9,000 feet, 12,000 feet to deliver something, and there he is sipping a cup of tea, and then he heard something, somebody saying, "Ki kal, no, somebody infiltrated." That news will travel to you the fastest. But the same access is not there in Ladakh. The day it happens, it will flow. But the political establishment or the bureaucracy is same. When have you heard people from the MEA briefing you about Pakistan on a daily affair? Never. So if I see the last 2 months, you've actually got more MEA briefing and more army headquarter briefing compared to LC actually. So if you see it from that perspective, that is the way it flows.
But during Uri and Balakot, they came out openly at exactly 11 a.m. on both the occasions.
Yes, that is when I say it is a strategic messaging. Some call it a political messaging. Both are correct. Both are correct because that message had to be given. I tell you why. You didn't want to escalate the level for the other side to do a propaganda of your aggression. So you specified we have targeted only the discerned camps. The satellite pictures, the conduct was told not only to our friends, but also to China. You found late Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, if you're aware, I'm not too sure, traveled to China to specifically give that proof. And that is how China also was quiet thereafter. So that is how it works. That is how it works. So if you are transgressing into somebody's area to hit targets, obviously you will have to have that moral ascendancy to say, why have you done it? So that is why the disclosure. But when you see the Indian media, it became a tutu meme or political tamasha. They're trying to garner votes and do that. That's Mubarak to everybody. They can do all that. It's not a domain.
Let's move on some other topic now. So 7 rounds of talks between military as well as the diplomatic level have completely yielded no result.
Yeah, Danish.
Now there are again talks of the 8th round.
Yes. See, these rounds can keep going on. Danish, I wrote very categorically in Doklam. And if you read my Facebook accounts and follow me on social media, you will find in 2017, I laid down what is going to happen in the next few years. It has turned exactly like that. When pre-Galwan happened, there were chiefs and vice chiefs and army commanders served in Northern Command and Eastern Command who said this is a small transgression, happens every time, they will go back. I said they will not go back. And somebody was a little sarcastic with me that time. And I said, you have all your rights and whatever you had to say. So I wrote down a little bit more on the Facebook blog and I have my YouTube going. I had my interviews with channels like yours. And I stated this is not going away. All these talks, I said high time that our diplomatic channel also participates in these talks. I've been vociferous about that. It has finally happened in the last round of talks. But to say that these talks will make a status quo ante of April happen, that will be a strategic blunder or operational misnomer as far as military and diplomatic channels are concerned. It's not going to happen, Danish. If it happens, I mean, I will be surprised. China has not invested in its infrastructure to come till finger whatever to go back. It doesn't suit its design. And I will tell you what transgression happened there. 4 is there, 8 is here. We say we go till 8, they say we come till 4. And for a long period of time, they came till 4 and went back. We went to 8 till come back. They made a road. When they made a road, the political dispensation that time couldn't take a hard decision to put a stop to that and call out. They didn't do that. So road happened. And on the road, they came, they went, we came. And suddenly this season, they came, they didn't go. And that is the way it goes. So if you are naive in your operational thought or a strategic thought at the national level, and if you don't understand the enemy's intent, this blunder would happen. But I will still not call it an intrusion. It is transgression because that is an area of differing perception. So that's a small difference when political parties fight. They don't know the difference between the two.
They are presently occupying 1,000 square kilometers to 1,200 square kilometers, depending on the news report.
No. See, what they are occupying, what we are occupying is fine. What is in the domain of captured Indian territory or intruded in Indian territory is currently nothing as far as we are concerned, which has happened since April. It is transgression. There has been no place in the area of differing perception in which a line has been crossed to our side and they have usurped the land. Contrary may be true if I can make that snide remark, and that is a possible deniability which my higher ups have to say that this colonel is not correct on that. It's fine. But the other way to say that there has been a intrusion and capture of Indian territory is not correct, because what they're currently holding is the area which is under the domain of transgression either side could do. There are different perceptions, which both these sides have not sat on the table and delineated. And one point I must tell you, Danish, is it's in our interest. It will be a long drawn strategy, has been and will be, of China not to resolve the border dispute. And the only way you can resolve the border dispute with a bully like that is try to go and take on the bully at spaces where he's weak and compel that transaction to happen. So I'm quite glad that whatever is happening may in the years to come lead to that. But as long as China has the advantage militarily with the spaces to open up, it will not have that resolution. With a lot of might, Russia has done it to a large degree. So it will take a lot of time to reach there.
Sir, my last question. The decision of
Please.
August 5th, 2019, how much that decision has contributed to the Chinese interest?
I missed the part before 2019. What did you say? It was just a lag there. Can you just repeat, Danish, please?
Sir, what are your opinions about the decision that was taken on August 5th, 2019? Do you think that has played a crucial part as far as this Chinese incursion is concerned?
No, I will now let me now dissect that 370-35 abrogation you're talking about. Yes, publicly, China has stated that as a reason to support Pakistan on a few more things, and the action this is taken. Now, see it from our perspective. I have no doubt in what I say, and I have no doubt in the books which we have seen. Kashmir is an integral part of India. There's no doubt there. POK is a part which has been taken forcibly by Pakistan. It belongs to India. We will go to the UN Charter later, what Pakistan didn't do and what has not happened. That's a different game. Now you see, Pakistan, on the basis of its being economically dependent to China and turning into a slave in the few years, has gifted a portion of that POK to China to let that corridor pass. Now, how does China legitimize that part if that part is claimed by India? So is the problem. The problem with China is that it has usurped a part of that territory which is illegal. It knows it is illegal. So this is basically a geopolitical signaling to take away the attention and talk about 370 in favor of Pakistan, because it has got its own axe to grind in that small part of POK. Period. There is no other rationale, Danish. And that's where China is currently. And Indian polity and diplomatic channels are quite smart to understand that. So we are making the right no noise kind of a thing. We know what we have to do. We will do it in the times to come.
And do you think there is going to be a war between India and China?
Which kind of war? If you're talking about a war, we are already at a war. If you're talking about a cyber war, economic war, diplomatic war,
a conventional war under the present given circumstances.
Yes, a conventional war at the lower level. If you have troops, maybe this season, next season, because 5-7 years, I see a lot of these border, interactions happening. Any interaction at the tactical level can lead to a small scale skirmish. That's a given, because you don't know how I, as a commanding officer, will react when something happens, to my troops or otherwise. That can happen from both sides. To call it a limited war at the theatrical context, it is something which I think can only happen when we upset the cart to a degree, or they upset the cart to a degree that it leads to that context. It is also contingent to how many friends we have, because China is losing friends. The third dimension of having a full-scale war.
Lost Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, China and Pakistan were always the adversaries. What we have done in Myanmar with that thing, we are losing them on the same hand.
No.
India is losing as well.
No, see, there have been a political, say, kind of a small tribulation with Nepal. I will not say no. That era is about to, contest us in the face, as you may say. But I will not say that it will turn to the level of what we are fearing. What we are fearing. So let's leave it at that for the moment, because you see, China will try. It is trying Turkey. It is trying Myanmar. It's trying Bhutan. It's trying everything in the book which is possible through Pakistan, trying to signal through them, come with us and I'll make you an economic power. I will give you the doles. Because while China does that, it is done in many African states as well. The world is realizing that today the soft loans and the zero interest loans are tomorrow going to hurt you, because China is going to own your resources and territory. It is something which Pakistan has fallen into an abyss and can't come out. But for countries like Bhutan and Myanmar, there is enough thought to go. So let's see how it goes. The political dispensation, I agree with you, can tilt anyway. But India is a strong state, and I will tell you just one more point before we finish, Danish. You follow China from say last 15-20 years, and I will say when I'm sitting like this and I put my elbow like this, I call it elbow space. So what do I create? I create a space that you can't come to my nose. China has got the same distinct policy insofar as border disputes are concerned, and you can draw this elbow any side, especially towards India. And wherever they rest, right from Bhutan to the easternmost part of our adjoining neighbor, you will find it is in Chinese interest to do so. Right from 26, China has made cartographic maps for Nepal. Even my own DGMI was not aware when I was a grade 1 there at that time as a major. And somebody got a map into my ops room from Delhi, and they were trying to find Lipu Lake on that map and the Tri Junction. And I made a comment as a young officer that, sir, I think you have gifted it to China or Nepal already. They said, how? So I turned around the map for them. The map they were carrying was made in China for Nepal, exchanged between us that time informally, not an official map. And that's when I told them that in the next 8-7 years, you will have this problem being sprung by China through Nepal as a proxy. It has taken, I think, 3 years more than my estimate, but it happened. But to control it, I think we have enough political will and diplomatic channels to do that. We don't have to think and worry about that at the current status.
Let's end it on this point. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you, Danish, for your time. God be kind. Jai Hind.
Thank you.